Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. The Monroe family dining room felt like a courtroom to Nolan Creed. Crystal glasses clinked against fine china as his in-laws passed plates around the long mahogany table. Nolan sat stiffly in his chair, watching steam rise from the roast beef. His fingers twitched slightly under the table, itching for a keyboard instead of the sterling silver fork that felt like a prop in his hand. "So, Nolan," Rhett Monroe's booming voice cut through the polite dinner conversation. "Still sitting at home, coding garbage?" The table went quiet. Nolan looked up from his plate to meet his father-in-law's stare. Rhett was ex-military, with a crew cut that hadn't changed style since the 80s and forearms like steel cables. He smiled while delivering the insult he always did. "I'm working on some interesting projects," Nolan replied evenly, cutting a piece of meat with careful precision. Valerie, his wife of 3 years, let out a small chuckle beside him. The sound was like a needle to his ear. He glanced at her beautiful, poised, with that perfect smile that never quite reached her eyes when she looked at him these days. "Projects," Rhett repeated, drawing out the word. "Son, in my day, we called that unemployment." Lorraine Pierce, Valerie's mother, tittered behind her napkin. "Now, Rhett, I'm sure Nolan's very busy with his computer things." The way she said computer things made it sound like he was playing video games in a basement. "Actually, Nolan started, but Valerie cut him off." "Dad, be nice. Nolan's freelancing is picking up. He made almost $3,000 last month." She patted his arm like he was a child who'd finally learned to tie his shoes. That IT wasn't true. He'd made nothing last month because he wasn't freelancing. But she didn't know that. No one did. 3,000. Rhett scoffed. "My gardener makes more." Nolan felt his jaw tighten, but kept his expression neutral. 3 years ago, when he'd married Valerie, Rhett had called him a smart young man with potential. That was before Nolan had quit his corporate job at a mid-level tech firm to work on his own project. Before the word potential had soured into disappointment. "How's that new security protocol coming along?" Greta, Valerie's younger sister, asked quietly from across the table. Her eyes met his with genuine interest, the only person besides his own sister who ever asked about his actual work. "Oh God, please don't get him started," Valerie interrupted with an exaggerated eye roll. "We'll be here all night, listening to technobabble." Nolan took a sip of water. "It's going well. Thanks for asking, Greta." "You know," Rhett said, jabbing his fork toward Nolan, "my buddy's son started at Microsoft last year. Already bought himself a condo. 26 years old." "That's wonderful," Nolan replied. "He got drive. Ambition." Rhett stared at Nolan. "Some men just have it, I guess. Others." He let the sentence hang unfinished. Nolan focused on his food. He could feel Valerie shifting uncomfortably next to him, but she said nothing. No defense. No change of subject. Just silence that felt like agreement. "Well, I think it's admirable," Greta said. "Building something from scratch." "If he's building anything at all," Valerie muttered, just loud enough for everyone to hear. Nolan looked at his wife, trying to remember what he'd seen in her when they met. She'd been ambitious then too, but she'd also been kind. Supportive. Now she looked at him with thinly veiled contempt, the same expression her father wore. "I should check on Marta," Nolan said, pulling out his phone. "My sister texted earlier." It was a lie, but he needed a moment. He stepped out onto the back porch, the night air cool against his face. He breathed deeply, staring up at the stars over suburban Ohio. His phone screen illuminated his face as he pulled up his actual project, not the text to Marta, and checked the server logs 0.2 minutes apiece before the French doors opened behind him. "You can't keep walking away when my dad talks to you." Valerie's voice was sharp, clipped. "It makes you look weak." Nolan turned, studying his wife's face in the dim porch light. Perfect makeup, perfect hair, perfect posture. When had she become so hard? "I don't think engaging with insults at a family dinner is the strong move you think it is," he replied. "They're not insults, they're truths." She crossed her arms. "You're not doing anything, Nolan. You sit in that room all day with your computers. And for what?" "I'm building something." "You've been building something for a year." She made air quotes. "Meanwhile, I'm carrying us financially and everyone knows it. I never asked you to do that, he said quietly. You didn't have to. What choice did I have when you suddenly decided to quit your job? Her voice rose. I have a reputation to maintain. Do you know how embarrassing it is when people ask what my husband does and I have to make something up? You don't have to make anything up. Tell them I'm developing a software company. She laughed, the sound brittle. A company? You're one guy in a spare bedroom with some coding books. Nolan felt something inside him harden. She really had no idea. He'd kept it that way on purpose, but still her lack of faith stung. Let's go back inside, he said flatly. Just try to look less pathetic when my dad talks to you, she snapped, turning toward the door. For my sake. Nolan watched her go, thinking about the secure server in Norway where his actual work lived. About the meetings he took at 2 a.m. with investors in Singapore. About the millions he'd already been offered for a beta version of his security protocol. He could tell her right now. End the charade. Watch her expression change from disdain to shock. But something stopped him, the same instinct that had kept him working in silence all this time. Let them laugh, he whispered to himself. Let them forget I exist. He followed her back into the lion's den of the Monroe family dinner point 3 days later. Nolan sat at his workstation, 3 monitors glowing in the dim light of their spare bedroom. Lines of code reflected in his glasses as he tested a new patch. His phone buzzed beside his keyboard. Valerie, we need to talk when I get home. Important. He frowned, checking the time. Just past noon. Valerie should be at her PR firm for another 5 hours. He sent a quick reply and turned back to his screens. The front door slammed at 1:15 p.m. Unusual. He saved his work, pushed back from the desk, and went to investigate. Valerie stood in the living room, still in her coat, scrolling through her phone with an excited energy radiating from her. She looked up when he entered. There you are, she said, as if she'd been looking all over instead of knowing exactly where he'd be. Sit down. Nolan remained standing. What's going on? I got the offer. Her face broke into a genuine smile, the kind he hadn't seen directed at him in months. Chicago. PR director for Midwest operations. 6 figures, Nolan. 6 figures. That's... He paused, processing. That's great. Congratulations. Her smile dimmed slightly at his muted reaction. That's it. That's great. This changes everything for us. Us. The word hung between them like a question mark. When would they want you to start? He asked. 3 weeks. We need to start looking at apartments right away. She pulled out her tablet, already swiping through listings. I was thinking Lincoln Park area. It's pricey, but with my new salary, I can't move to Chicago. Nolan said quietly. Valerie's fingers froze over the screen. What? My work is here. My servers, my setup. I can't just pick up and... Your work? She stared at him in disbelief. You mean your hobby? Your pretend job that brings in 0 income? Nolan felt his face grow hot. It's not pretend. Then show me something real, she snapped. Show me a product. Show me a customer. Show me a paycheck. He said nothing. He could not yet. The NDA he'd signed with his investors was ironclad until they went to market. That's what I thought. She shook her head. Look, it's time to be realistic. This is a real opportunity. A career. Security. You can find an actual IT job in Chicago. There are plenty of companies that would hire you. I'm not looking for an IT job. Then what are you looking for? Her voice rose. To sit in this house, playing tech pretend forever while I support us? Is that the plan? I've supported myself just fine, he said coldly. My savings cover my half of everything for the past year. And now they're gone, right? I see the bank statements, Nolan. You're running on fumes. Another assumption she'd made. Another way she underestimated him. His actual funds were carefully hidden in accounts she knew nothing about, connected to the LLC he'd established with Zeke as the public face. I'm not moving to Chicago, he repeated. Valerie stared at him, her expression hardening from frustration to something colder. You know what your problem is? You're scared. Scared to try something real because you might fail. At least I take risks. At least I put myself out there. This isn't about fear. No. Then what's it about? Your brilliant invention that's going to change the world. Her voice dripped with sarcasm. Wake up, Nolan. You're not the next Steve Jobs. You're just a guy who couldn't hack it in a real job, hiding in a spare room with delusions of grandeur. Each word hit like a physical blow, but Nolan kept his expression neutral. This wasn't the first time she'd said these things. It was just the most direct. "I think you should take the job," he said finally. Her eyebrows shot up. "Really? You're on board?" "I think you should take the job," he repeated. "But I won't be coming with you." The silence that followed was absolute. Valerie's face went through a series of emotions: shock, anger, hurt, and finally, a cold calculation that made her look startlingly like her father. "So that's it. After 3 years, you're choosing your fantasy over our marriage. I'm choosing my work. The work you've never believed in or supported. Because it's not real," she shouted, her composure finally breaking. "God, listen to yourself. You sound delusional. Maybe to you." She grabbed her purse from the couch. "I need some air. We'll talk about this when I get back. Maybe you'll have come to your senses by then." The door slammed behind her for the second time that hour. Nolan stood in the empty living room, the echo of her words ringing in his ears. He pulled out his phone, dialed a number from memory. "Zeke, it's me. You got a minute?" 20 minutes later, Nolan sat on the back porch steps, phone pressed to his ear as his oldest friend laughed on the other end of the line. "She seriously has no idea?" Zeke Banner asked, his New York finance bro accent contrasting with the Midwestern quiet of Nolan's backyard. "About any of it?" "None," Nolan confirmed, watching a cardinal hop across the lawn. "Not about the servers in Oslo. Not about the Singapore investors. Definitely not about the $8 million in escrow." "Man, that's cold." "I like it." Zeke chuckled. "But don't you think it's time to come clean? I mean, Baxter Investments is ready to go public with their backing next quarter. Your name's going to be out there." "Not if we keep everything under your name for now," Nolan said. "Like we discussed." "Yeah, but why?" "I get keeping a low profile during development, but we're past that now. The prototype's solid. The patents are filed. Why keep playing poor developer with a wife who thinks you're a loser?" Nolan watched the Cardinal take flight, a streak of red against the blue Ohio sky. "Because they expect me to fail, Zeke. All of them, Valerie, her dad, her whole family. They're so sure I'm nothing. So prove them wrong. Drop the bomb, watch their faces." "Not yet." Nolan felt a strange calm as he made the decision. "Let them laugh. Let them forget I exist. When we launch, when everyone knows what we've built, the surprise will be better." "You're an evil genius, Creed. Remind me never to cross you." Nolan smiled for the first time that day. "How are things on your end? Any leaks from the finance team?" "Tight as a drum. As far as anyone knows, I'm the wonder kind who developed the API security protocol. Nobody suspects I'm just the pretty face." "Good. Keep it that way. Just for a little longer." After hanging up, Nolan sat watching the sky darken. His phone buzzed with a notification. He glanced down, then froze. Valerie had posted on her social media, "When you're the breadwinner with a boy who plays tech, pretend. Hashtag reality check, hashtag moving up, hashtag Chicago bound attached," was a selfie of her drinking champagne with her work friends. The post already had dozens of sympathetic comments. He scrolled through them, his face expressionless. "Girl, lose the dead weight. Men who can't handle successful women, you deserve better. Val." His thumb hovered over the screen. He could reply. He could end this charade right now. Instead, he closed the app, pocketed his phone, and went back inside to his workstation. The monitors glowed like beacons in the dimming light. He had work to do. The house had become a war zone, silent, cold, with carefully negotiated territories. 2 months had passed since Valerie had taken a Chicago job, commuting back on weekends to a home that no longer felt like a shared space. Nolan had converted the dining room into an extended workstation. Valerie had claimed the master bedroom as her private domain. They moved around each other like ghosts, connected only by the legal document that declared them husband and wife. Tonight, Nolan heard her come in after midnight. The front door opened and closed, followed by the thump of her weekend bag hitting the floor and the unmistakable stumble of someone who'd had too much to drink. He kept his eyes on his center monitor, fingers moving steadily across the keyboard. "You're still up." Her voice came from the dining room doorway, slightly slurred. "It's 2 in the morning. I'm aware of the time," he replied without looking up. "Working on your little project." The mockery in her tone wasn't new, but the volume was higher than usual. The alcohol, Probably. Nolan saved his work and turned his chair. Valerie leaned against the doorframe, still in her going-out clothes, a tight black dress, heels dangling from her fingers. Her makeup was smudged at the corners. "Good night out?" he asked neutrally. "Amazing. The agency took us to this rooftop bar." She waved her free hand vaguely. "You wouldn't know it. Too expensive for, well." She gestured at his setup. "Sounds nice." He turned back to his screens. "That's it? No questions about who I was with, what I was doing? Would you answer honestly if I asked?" Her laugh was brittle. "You don't get to play the wrong husband when you're the one who chose this over me." She swept her arm to indicate his workstation. "I didn't choose anything over you," he said quietly. "I chose my work alongside you. You're the one who made it an ultimatum, because you're wasting your life." Her voice rose sharply. "Look at you. It's Saturday night, Sunday morning, actually, and you're sitting here in the dark, typing away at nothing." Nolan looked at the timestamp on his screen. In 8 hours, the first phase of his API security protocol would go live for beta testing with 3 major financial institutions. The contracts were worth $12 million combined. His heart rate didn't even increase at the thought he knew the code was flawless. "Not nothing," he said simply. "Whatever." She pushed off from the doorframe. "I'm going to bed. Some of us have real jobs to get back to tomorrow. I thought you weren't going back until Monday morning. Plans change." She turned toward the hallway, then paused. "By the way, I used the joint card for some things in Chicago. The apartment needed furniture. The apartment I've never seen. You could see it any time you wanted." She snapped. "The door's open, just not for your imaginary career." After she left, Nolan pulled up their bank statement. $5,000 at high-end furniture stores. Another $3,000 at designer boutiques that definitely didn't sell furniture. He closed the browser with a sigh, making a mental note to transfer more funds into the account. Let her spend. It didn't matter. What mattered was the code, the company, the coming revealed. He worked through the night, fueled by black coffee and the quiet fire of determination that had kept him going for the past year. At 6 a.m., as dawn broke over the quiet Ohio neighborhood, he executed the final command that would send his creation into the world. Then he stood, stretched his tight muscles, and went to make breakfast. Valerie emerged at noon, hungover and irritable, to find him sitting at the kitchen counter with his laptop. "There's coffee," he said without looking up. She grunted in response, heading straight for the pot. After pouring a cup, she leaned against the counter, studying him with bloodshot eyes. "You look like you haven't slept." "I haven't," he admitted. Shocking. Her tone dripped sarcasm. His phone buzzed. A text from Zeke. "It's live. All systems green." "You magnificent bastard." You did it at a smile tug at the corner of his mouth before he could suppress it. "What's that?" Valerie asked, suddenly alert despite her hangover. "Good news. Just Zeke," Nolan said, pocketing the phone. "Seeing if I want to catch up next weekend." "Zeke," she repeated, her expression softening slightly. "How is he? Still killing it in New York?" "He's doing well. Now there's someone who made something of himself," she said, a pointed edge returning to her voice. "Remember when you two were roommates? You were both so ambitious." Then he actually followed through. Nolan took a slow sip of his coffee, savoring the irony she couldn't see. Zeke, the frontman. The face. The name on the press releases they'd start sending out in 3 months, once the beta testing proved what Nolan already knew, that his security protocol was revolutionary. "He's doing what works for him," Nolan said simply. "You could have been doing the same," she muttered. "Instead of whatever this is." Nolan closed his laptop. "I'm going to grab a shower, then sleep for a few hours. Don't you want to know about my plans?" "About Chicago." He paused at the kitchen doorway. "Do you want to tell me?" She stared at him, coffee cup halfway to her lips. For a moment, he thought he saw a flicker of the woman he'd married, someone who had once shared her hopes and dreams with him, who had listened to his in return. Then her expression hardened. "No," she said. "I don't think I do." The Monroe family reunion happened every summer at a lakeside park about an hour outside of town. Nolan had successfully avoided it the previous year, claiming a stomach virus. This year, Valerie had insisted, her eyes glinting with something that looked suspiciously like the desire to show off her success in contrast to his perceived failure. He stood at the grill with a beer he wasn't drinking, watching Rhett Monroe hold court with his brothers and male cousins. Valerie flitted between groups, the perfect social butterfly, her new Chicago sophistication on full display. She hadn't spoken directly to Nolan since they'd arrived 3 hours ago. "You look like you're having about as much fun as a root canal." The voice beside him made him turn. His sister Marta stood there, a paper plate loaded with potato salad in one hand, an identical beer to his in the other. At 31, she looked like a female version of him, same dark hair, same observant gray eyes, same stubborn set to the jaw. "Family reunions aren't really my thing," he replied, "especially when it's not your family." She nodded toward Rhett. "Has Sergeant Hardass been giving you trouble?" "No more than usual." Nolan took a pretend sip of his beer. "How's Dad?" "Same. Stubborn. Won't retire even though his back is killing him." She nudged him with her elbow. "He asks about you. Says you don't call enough." Guilt tugged at him. Their father had raised them alone after their mother died, working double shifts as a mechanic to keep food on the table and the lights on. He deserved better than a son who disappeared into his work. "I'll call him tonight," Nolan promised. "So," Marta lowered her voice, "how bad is it?" "Really? With you and Valerie?" He shrugged. "We're legally married. Practically roommates. Roommates who hate each other. Roommates who don't have much to say to each other," he corrected. "She has her life in Chicago. I have my work. Your mysterious work that you won't tell anyone about." Marta studied his face. "Not even me." Nolan smiled slightly. "It's complicated. Is it illegal? Because if you're running some kind of dark web operation, I don't want to know." "It's not illegal." "Are you in trouble? Do you need money?" "Because I can." "I don't need money," he said quickly. "I'm fine, Marta." "Better than fine." She didn't look convinced. "Then why the secret?" Nolan watched as Valerie laughed at something one of her cousins said, head thrown back, completely in her element. "Some things are better revealed at the right moment." "That's cryptic and annoying," Marta complained. "But fine, keep your secrets. Just promise me you're not in over your head." Before he could answer, a new voice joined their conversation, smooth, confident, with the practiced charm of someone used to being the most important person in the room. "You must be the famous Marta. Valerie's told me so much about you." Nolan turned to see a tall man with perfect teeth and expertly styled hair, extending a hand to his sister. "Quincy Blake, startup darling, TechCrunch cover boy, and, if Nolan remembered correctly from Valerie's social media, the new boyfriend of her best friend. Not famous, but yes, I'm Marta," his sister replied, shaking the offered hand with obvious wariness. "And Nolan." Quincy turned to him with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "The coding wizard himself." "Quincy," Nolan acknowledged with a nod. "I didn't expect to see you here. Oh, Melissa and I are practically family now." He gestured to where Valerie stood with an attractive brunette, the best friend in question. Besides, who could pass up a beautiful day by the lake with beautiful company? His gaze lingered on Valerie in a way that made Nolan's jaw tighten imperceptibly. "How's the new venture?" Quincy continued, turning back to Nolan. "Valerie mentioned you were working on something independent." The way he said independent made it sound like imaginary. "It's coming along," Nolan said. "Well, if you ever want some advice." Quincy reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. "I've been around the block in the startup world. Raised 8 figures for my last company before the acquisition." "I know," Nolan said. "I read about it." Quincy's smile faltered slightly at Nolan's lack of obvious impression. "Well, the offer stands. Sometimes the difference between a hobby and a business is the right guidance. I'll keep that in mind." Marta glanced between them, sensing the undercurrent. "I think I'll grab some more potato salad," she said, making a strategic retreat. As soon as she was out of earshot, Quincy's demeanor changed, the smile becoming sharper, more predatory. "Look, let's cut the crap," he said in a lower voice. "Valerie tells me you two are on the rocks. That you're playing inventor while she carries the financial load." Nolan said nothing, just took another pretend sip of his beer. "I've seen it before," Quincy continued. "Guy has some technical skills, thinks he's going to disrupt an industry from his garage. It's admirable, in a Don Quixote kind of way. Is there a point to this? Nolan asked, his voice level. The point is, I might have a position for you at my new venture. Junior developer. Decent salary, stock options. Something real. Quincy clapped him on the shoulder. Think of it as a lifeline. A way to save face with the in-laws. The condescension was so thick Nolan could almost see it hanging in the air between them. Thanks, but I'm good, he replied. Are you? Because from where I'm standing. Quincy glanced pointedly at Valerie, who was now watching them with interest. You could use all the help you can get. She's out of your league, man. Always was. But at least if you were doing something legitimate, I appreciate your concern. Nolan cut him off. But my career is fine. Quincy shrugged. Your call. Just trying to help a friend of a friend. He lowered his voice further. Between us, she's already got one foot out the door. Might want to think about what your next move is. With that, he walked away, rejoining the group where Valerie and Melissa stood. Nolan watched as he whispered something to them, causing both women to glance in his direction before laughing. Marta returned, frowning. What was that about? Nothing important, Nolan replied. Just startup bro posturing. He seemed like a tool. He is. Nolan set his untouched beer down on a nearby table. I'm going to find a restroom. He walked away from the reunion, needing space. The park had a small building with facilities near the entrance. As he approached, he saw Greta Monroe sitting alone on a bench nearby, focused intently on a book. Heavy reading for a family picnic, he commented as he drew closer. She looked up, startled, then smiled when she saw who it was. Oh, Nolan. Hi. She held up the book, a technical manual on data architecture. Just some work stuff. I needed a break from. She waved vaguely toward the reunion. I know the feeling. He gestured to the bench. Mind if I join you? Please. She shifted to make room. How have you been? I heard about, Chicago. News travels fast in the Monroe family, he observed. Like wildfire. She agreed with a rueful smile. For what it's worth, I think it's cool that you're building your own thing. You might be the only one who thinks so. Not the only one, she said. Just the only one here. She nodded toward her book. I get it, The drive to create something that's yours. Everyone thought I was crazy for turning down law school to get into tech. Nolan studied her with new interest. Of all the Monroes, Greta had always been the quietest, the most overlooked, much like him. How's that going, he asked. Good, actually. I'm working for an enterprise software company now. Back-end systems, data management. She hesitated. I've been following some of the advances in API security, actually. There's this new protocol that's supposed to be revolutionary. I read about it in a trade journal last week. Nolan felt a jolt of surprise. That had to be his protocol. The beta testing had only begun a month ago, but word was spreading faster than he'd anticipated in technical circles. Oh, he said carefully. What's special about it? Greta's eyes lit up, clearly relieved to have someone to talk shop with. It's a totally new approach to zero-trust architecture. Instead of just verifying credentials at the point of entry, it creates dynamic authentication challenges throughout the entire session based on behavior patterns. Supposedly, it's virtually impossible to spoof. She paused. Sorry, this is probably boring to you. Not at all, he said, fighting to keep his expression neutral. She was describing his exact innovation, in detail only someone with genuine technical understanding could articulate. The company behind it is keeping pretty quiet, she continued. All the articles mention some guy named Banner as the developer, but the technical details suggest a team effort. It's fascinating stuff. Before Nolan could respond, a sharp voice interrupted them. There you are. Valerie stood a few feet away, arms crossed. Dad's looking for you, Greta. Something about helping with the boat. Greta sighed, closing her book. Duty calls. Nice talking to you, Nolan. As she walked away, Valerie took her spot on the bench, watching her sister's retreating form with narrowed eyes. What were you two talking about so intently? Work, Nolan replied simply. Her work or your? She made air quotes. Work? Both, actually. Valerie studied him, suspicion evident on her face. Listen, Dad wants to talk to you. And me. Together. About? Does it matter? He's the host. Just come with me and try not to embarrass me for once. Nolan stood, gesturing for her to lead the way. As they walked back toward the main gathering, he spotted Rhett standing by a cooler, watching their approach with an expression that promised nothing good. "There's the happy couple," Rhett called as they drew near. Several family members turned to look, creating an audience that Nolan suspected was exactly what his father-in-law wanted. "What's up, Dad?" Valerie asked, her tone artificially bright. "Just wanted to share some good news with my son-in-law." Rhett pulled another beer from the cooler, holding it out to Nolan like a peace offering. When Nolan shook his head, Rhett shrugged and cracked it open for himself. Greta's new boyfriend, he announced, worked for Johnson Biotech. Senior developer. 6 figures. Medical benefits. Company car. The pointed comparison wasn't subtle. Several of the onlookers shifted uncomfortably. "Good for him," Nolan replied evenly. "He's taking her to Paris next month," Rhett continued. "First class. The whole works. Sounds nice. That's what success looks like, son." Rhett took a long pull from his beer. "That's what a real man provides." Nolan felt the eyes of the entire extended family on him, waiting for his response. Valerie stood slightly apart from him now, as if to distance herself from whatever was coming. "Everyone has their own definition of success," Nolan said, keeping his voice calm. "Do they?" Rhett stepped closer, the smell of beer on his breath. "Because from where I'm standing, you were never the smart one, Nolan. Never had what it takes. My daughter out-earned you from day one, and now she's carrying you completely while you play computer games in my old house." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the distant sounds of children playing by the lake seemed to have faded away. Nolan looked at Valerie, waiting for her to say something, anything to contradict her father's assessment. She stared at the ground. In that moment, something crystallized in Nolan. A decision. A turning point. The fire that had been building quietly for months hardened into cold, implacable resolve. He looked Rhett directly in the eye. "Okay, just that one word." Spoken softly, without anger or defense. Then he turned and walked away, ignoring the murmurs that broke out behind him. He found a quiet spot under a tree, pulled out his phone, and made 3 calls in quick succession. When he was done, he rejoined the reunion, saying nothing about what had transpired. He ate potato salad. He talked to Marta. He even managed a civil conversation with one of Valerie's uncles about fishing. Inside, though, everything had changed. The plan wasn't just about success anymore. It was about revenge. 2 months later, Nolan sat in a hotel lobby in Singapore, nursing a cup of black coffee as he scrolled through market reports on his tablet. The hotel's massive windows offered a panoramic view of the city skyline, glittering against the night sky. His phone buzzed with an incoming call. "Zeke, how's it going over there?" his friend asked without preamble. "Just wrapped the meeting with Technovate," Nolan replied. "They're in for another 20 million. Hot damn." Zeke whistled. "That puts us at what? 150 total in the war chest." 162, Nolan corrected. "And we haven't even started the Series B round yet." "You beautiful maniac." Zeke laughed. "When are you coming back to the States?" The PR team is getting antsy about the official launch. They want some quotes from the mysterious founder. "Still working with a ghostwriter on those," Nolan said, taking a sip of his coffee. "The plan stands. Everything goes through you until the day we go public." "About that," Zeke's voice turned more serious. "The SEC filings are almost ready. We can't keep your name off those, man. Not legally. I know. But the press releases, the interviews, the tech conference panels, those still go through you." "If you say so." Zeke paused. "How's the home front?" Nolan glanced at his watch. It was 9 p.m. in Singapore, which made it 9 a.m. back in Ohio. Quiet. Valerie's been in Chicago for 3 weeks straight. Still clueless about the empire you're building? Completely. And you're still legally married because... Nolan set his cup down carefully. Timing. The divorce needs to happen at exactly the right moment. You're a cold, calculating bastard, Creed. Zeke didn't sound disapproving, more impressed. "Did you see the industry analyst reports that came out yesterday? They're already calling Banner Security Solutions the next unicorn. And nobody has even seen the full product specs yet." "I saw." Nolan allowed himself a small smile. "By the way, I've got the next phase of the plan ready to go. I need you to buy up shares in ComSecure and NetGuard." "Our competitors?" "What? Just do it." through shell companies the way we discussed. 10% of each. That's going to cost. I know exactly what it will cost. Nolan cut him off. Just make it happen. After ending the call, Nolan turned his attention back to the Singapore skyline. His phone buzzed again with a notification. Valerie had posted to social media again. Office views not bad today. Hashtag corner office, hashtag Chicago skyline, hashtag boss babe. The photo showed a sleek office with floor-to-ceiling windows and Lake Michigan in the distance. He scrolled through the comments. Living the dream, Val. So proud of you, girl. Left Ohio in the dust. Your husband's still playing computer games? The last comment was from Melissa, Valerie's best friend. Valerie had replied with a rolling eyes emoji and don't get me started. Nolan closed the app, pocketed his phone, and signaled to the waiter for the check. He had a late dinner meeting with investors from Hong Kong, and then a red-eye flight back to the States. There was work to do. 3 weeks later, Nolan sat at his workstation in the converted dining room, reviewing the final adjustments to the partnership agreement that would seal the fate of ComSecure, one of their main competitors. The clock on his screen read 2:17 a.m. The front door opened and closed. Heavier footsteps than Valerie's. Multiple people. He's probably in here. Valerie's voice, slightly slurred. Always is. Nolan minimized the document just as the dining room door swung open. Valerie stood there, clearly intoxicated, with Quincy Blake and 2 other men Nolan didn't recognize. Told you, she said to her companions. The coding wizard, hard at work saving the world. Her tone was mocking. Valerie, Nolan acknowledged, then nodded to the others. Quincy, hope we're not interrupting anything important, Quincy said with a smirk, leaning against the doorframe. Nothing that can't wait. Nolan pushed his chair back. What's going on? Just a little celebration, Valerie announced, swaying slightly. Quincy's company got acquired. Big money. Thought we'd bring the party here. Congratulations, Nolan said to Quincy, keeping his tone neutral. Which company made the purchase? Technovate, Quincy replied, his chest puffing slightly. Ever heard of them? Singapore-based. Major player in the Asian market. Nolan's expression didn't change, though internally he smiled at the irony. Technovate, one of his biggest investors. The same company he'd met with in Singapore a month earlier. I've heard the name, he said simply. 40 million, Quincy announced, clearly wanting to impress. Plus stock options and a 3-year executive contract. That's impressive, Nolan conceded, watching Valerie's face as she gazed at Quincy with open admiration. We should celebrate with real drinks, Valerie declared, spinning unsteadily toward the kitchen. I think there's still some of that scotch my dad gave us for Christmas. I'll pass, Nolan said. It's late, and I have work in the morning. Quincy laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound. Work? Is that what we're calling it now? He stepped closer, lowering his voice so the others couldn't hear. You know what's sad, man? You could have joined my team when I offered. Could have been part of this acquisition. Instead, you're still here, playing make-believe while your wife finds comfort elsewhere. The implication was clear, especially given the way Quincy glanced toward the kitchen where Valerie had disappeared. Are you telling me my wife is cheating on me? Nolan asked directly, his voice calm. Quincy looked startled, then recovered with a smug grin. I'm telling you she's got options. Better ones than this. He waved dismissively at Nolan's setup. Nolan studied him for a moment, then nodded. I think it's time for you and your friends to leave. Excuse me. You heard me. This is still my house, and you're no longer welcome in it. Quincy's face flushed with anger. You don't get... Quincy. Nolan's voice remained perfectly level, but something in his eyes made the other man stop mid-sentence. Take your friends and go. For a moment, Quincy seemed ready to argue, but something in Nolan's steady gaze made him reconsider. He muttered a curse, then called to his friends and headed for the door. Valerie returned with a bottle and glasses just as the front door slammed. Where did everyone go? Home, Nolan said. Where you should have gone instead of bringing strangers to our house at 2 in the morning. They weren't strangers. They were Quincy's business partners. She set the glasses down with a clatter. God, you're such a killjoy. No wonder nobody wants to be around you. Is that why you're never here? Why you're spending more time with Quincy than your own husband? Her eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? Exactly what it sounds like. Are you accusing me of something? She looked more alert now, anger burning away some of the alcohol's effect. Should I be? They stared at each other across the room, the distance between them measured in more than just feet. You know what your problem is, Nolan? Valerie finally said. You're so caught up in your little fantasy world that you can't see what's right in front of you. I have a real career, real friends, a real life. What do you have? Lines of code that will never amount to anything. If that's what you believe, then why are you still here? He asked quietly. Why are we still married? The question seemed to catch her off guard. She blinked, swaying slightly. I don't know, she admitted. Habit? Hope that you'll eventually snap out of it. The fact that divorce is expensive and you have nothing worth taking. Her honesty, brutal as it was almost refreshing after months of pretense. What if I told you I've been watching our bank accounts? Nolan said, changing tactics. That I know about the credit card you opened in my name? Her face paled slightly. What are you talking about? The Amex Platinum. Applied for online using my social security number and employment history. Approved with a $30,000 limit. Currently carrying a balance of $22,614. You're making that up, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. I got the statements, Valerie. All of them. The shopping sprees in Chicago. The weekend in New York with Melissa. The jewelry. The designer handbags. He kept his tone conversational, as if discussing the weather. That's fraud, by the way. Identity theft. Credit card fraud. Both felonies. You're my husband, she sputtered. We share expenses. Not expenses you hide from me. Not accounts you open without my knowledge or consent. She stared at him, calculation replacing drunken belligerence in her eyes. What do you want? I want you to move your things to Chicago permanently. I want you to stop coming back here pretending we have a marriage. And I want you to close that credit card and pay it off. Or what? You'll report me. She laughed, a brittle sound. Nobody would believe you. Poor, delusional Nolan, trying to smear his successful wife because he can't handle her success. Maybe he conceded. Or maybe I already have documentation of the fraud. Maybe I've already spoken to a lawyer. Maybe I'm just giving you a chance to fix this before it goes further. The bluff worked. He saw the moment doubt crept into her expression. She hadn't expected him to fight back. Not like this. Fine, she snapped. Keep the house. Keep your precious computers. I'm done trying to help you. You've never tried to help me, he said quietly. You've only ever tried to change me. She stared at him for a long moment, then turned and stormed off toward the bedroom. Nolan returned to his workstation, pulling up his email. He forwarded the evidence of Valerie's credit card fraud to his secure server, then composed a new message to his lawyer. The game was changing. It was time to prepare for the endgame. The news broke on a Tuesday morning in early spring. Nolan sat in a sleek downtown cafe, sipping espresso and watching his phone as the notifications rolled in. Breaking. Banner Security Solutions reveals true founder and CEO Tech World shocked as unknown developer Nolan Creed, named as mastermind behind revolutionary security protocol Banner Security valued at $1.2 billion after Series B funding round. His phone rang. Zeke. It's happening, his friend said, excitement evident in his voice. Just like we planned. The tech blogs are going crazy. CNN Business wants an interview. Forbes is preparing a cover story. Good, Nolan replied calmly. And the other matter? ComSecure's stock is in free fall. The partnership announcement hit them hard. NetGuard is scrambling to respond, but they're playing catch-up. Exactly like you predicted. Nolan watched a young couple at a nearby table scrolling through their phones, stopping to point at what he assumed was the breaking news about his company. Perfect. I'll be at the office in an hour. Make sure everything's ready for the press conference. As he ended the call, his phone buzzed with incoming texts. Marta, what the actual hell? You're a billionaire? Nolan smiled, typing back, not quite. Company's valued at $1 billion. My stake is worth about half that. Marta, I'm going to kill you for keeping this secret. Also, I need a new car. He laughed out loud at that, the first genuine laugh in longer than he could remember. Another notification appeared in email from Valerie. He opened it with mild curiosity. We need to talk. Now, call me. Oh, congratulations. No apology. Just a demand. He deleted it without responding and finished his espresso. By the time he arrived at the gleaming downtown office building that housed Banner Security Solutions headquarters, the lobby was buzzing with activity. Security guards kept the press at bay outside while employees hurried about with an extra spring in their steps, energized by the public revelation of their company's true founder. Mr. Creed. The receptionist beamed at him as he entered. Everyone's waiting for you in the conference room. Thank you, Diane. He made his way to the executive elevator, nodding at employees who stared at him with new respect. The secret had been kept remarkably well. Only a handful of top executives had known that Zeke Banner was merely the public face of the company, not its true creator. Zeke met him as the elevator doors opened on the top floor. There he is, the man of the hour. Everything's set for the press conference. Nolan asked, straightening his tie. Completely. But first... Zeke grinned, gesturing toward the conference room. Someone wants to see you. Nolan raised an eyebrow, but followed his friend down the hall. When the door opened, he stopped short. Marta stood there with her father, Jim Creed, a barrel-chested man with calloused hands and more gray than black in his hair now. Dad, Nolan said, surprised. What are you doing here? Jim Creed crossed the room in 3 strides and wrapped his son in a bear hug. You think I'd miss this? My boy on the news. When he pulled back, his eyes were suspiciously damp. Your mom would have been so proud. Nolan felt a lump form in his throat. I should have told you both sooner. I just wanted to be sure it would work. His father finished for him, always with a careful one, planning 10 steps ahead. While I was busy telling everyone you were having a mental breakdown, Marta added, punching him lightly on the arm before hugging him. You jerk. Do you know how worried I was? I'm sorry. Nolan said sincerely. I needed to keep it quiet until everything was in place. Including destroying your marriage? His father asked, more gently than the words themselves. Nolan's expression hardened slightly. That was destroyed long before the company launched. Before any of them could respond, Nolan's assistant appeared at the door. Mr. Creed? The press is ready whenever you are. Give me 5 minutes, he replied. When she left, he turned back to his family. I want you both there. Front row. Wouldn't miss it, Jim said, clapping him on the shoulder. Just one thing first. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Your mother wanted you to have this when you made your mark on the world. I'd say today qualifies. Nolan opened the box to find a simple gold pocket watch his grandfather's. The one possession his mother had saved from her own father. Dad, I can't. You can and you will, Jim insisted. She knew, Nolan. Even when you were just a kid tinkering with old computers in the garage. She knew you were going to do something extraordinary. Nolan carefully tucked the watch into his suit pocket, nodding his thanks when words failed him. 5 minutes later, he stood at a podium facing a room packed with journalists, cameras flashing as he formally introduced himself as the founder and CEO of Banner Security Solutions. In the front row, his father and sister beamed with pride. Beside them, Zeke grinned like the cat who'd gotten the cream, relieved to finally drop the pretense and step into his actual role as CFO. Mr. Creed, a reporter called out after his opening statement. Why keep your identity secret during the company's formation? Was it a marketing strategy? Nolan smiled slightly. I wanted the work to speak for itself. In tech, there's often too much focus on personalities and not enough on the actual innovation. Another hand shot up. The Banner security protocol has been called revolutionary. Major banks and government agencies are already adopting it. What inspired your approach? A recognition that traditional security models were fundamentally flawed, Nolan explained, falling into the familiar rhythm of discussing his creation. They assumed trust at the point of entry, rather than continuous verification. Our protocol changes that paradigm entirely. The questions continued technical, financial, personal. Nolan handled them all with calm precision, neither boastful nor false modest. When asked about his background, he spoke briefly about being self-taught, about working for years in obscurity before the breakthrough, and one asked about Valerie. Not yet. After the press conference, Nolan found himself surrounded by his executive team, accepting congratulations and fielding questions about next steps. His phone buzzed constantly in his pocket, messages from old colleagues, industry contacts suddenly eager to reconnect, and one particularly persistent caller. Valerie died on her 12th attempt. He finally stepped away from the group and answered. "Hello, Valerie." "Don't hello, Valerie me," she hissed. "What the hell is going on? You're all over the news." "Yes," he confirmed simply. "I am. You've been lying to me for years," she accused. "All this time, pretending to be some struggling nobody while you were secretly building a billion-dollar company." "Not lying," he corrected. "Just not sharing information with someone who didn't believe in me. That's ridiculous. I always supported you." Nolan actually laughed at that. "Is that what you call it? The mockery? The contempt? Telling your father and all your friends that I was delusional?" She fell silent for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice had changed softer, with a hint of the charm she'd once used to win him over. "Look, I may have been harsh. I didn't understand what you were working on. But we can fix this. We're still married. We can start over." "No," he said simply. "We can't. Nolan, be reasonable. We have history. 3 years of marriage, which you've spent undermining me at every turn. I'm your wife." "Not for much longer," he replied coldly. "Check your email. My lawyer sent divorce papers this morning." A sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. "You can't do this." "I already have. I'm entitled to half of everything you've built," she said, desperation creeping into her voice. "Half of that company is legally mine." "No," Nolan replied calmly. "It isn't. The company was formed after our separation, with funds that were never part of our marital assets. But feel free to try your luck in court." He ended the call before she could respond, turning his phone to silent and rejoining the celebration. The confrontation he'd been anticipating for years had finally begun, and it had gone exactly as he'd expected. Valerie Monroe was about to learn what it meant to underestimate Nolan Creed. The divorce proceedings moved faster than either of them had anticipated. Valerie hired an aggressive attorney known for extracting massive settlements in high-profile divorces. Nolan countered with a legal team that had been preparing for this exact scenario for over a year. They faced each other across a conference table in the law offices of Goldman & Schmidt, neither having spoken directly since their phone call after the press conference. Valerie looked immaculate as always, but Nolan noted the tightness around her eyes, the slight downward turn of her mouth. She was worried. "Before we begin," her lawyer started, "my client would like to explore the possibility of reconciliation. Given the recent revelations about Mr. Creed's financial situation, perhaps a cooling-off period would benefit both parties." "My client is not interested in reconciliation," Nolan's attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Jessica Weathers, replied. "He's been quite clear on that point. Mrs. Creed feels that she may have been hasty in her assessment of their differences." The lawyer continued smoothly. "She believes their marriage deserves another chance, now that all cards are on the table, so to speak." Nolan watched Valerie's face as her lawyer spoke. She attempted to look earnest, even contrite, but he could see the calculation behind her eyes. This wasn't about saving their marriage, it was about buying time to build a stronger claim on his assets. "Mr. Creed's position remains unchanged," Jessica stated firmly. "In fact, we've prepared documentation that we believe will expedite these proceedings considerably." She slid a folder across the table. Valerie's lawyer opened it, scanning the contents with increasing concern. "What is this?" Valerie demanded, trying to look at the papers. "Evidence of financial malfeasance on your part," Jessica explained calmly. "Credit card accounts opened fraudulently in my client's name. Bank accounts drained without his knowledge or consent. Documentation of your extramarital affair with Quincy Blake, including hotel receipts paid for with those fraudulently obtained credit cards." Valerie's face drained of color. That's not. "Additionally," Jessica continued, "we have evidence that you attempted to access Mr. Creed's secure work servers on multiple occasions, which could constitute attempted corporate espionage, given your relationship with Mr. Blake, a direct competitor." "This is preposterous," Valerie's lawyer sputtered. "My client categorically denies. The evidence is quite comprehensive." Jessica cut him off, "including video surveillance from hotels, witness statements, and electronic records authenticated by 2 independent forensic analysts." Nolan hadn't taken his eyes off Valerie throughout the exchange. He saw the moment she realized she was cornered, the slight widening of her eyes, the involuntary swallow. "We're prepared to offer a settlement," Jessica continued, "conditional upon Mrs. Creed dropping all claims to marital assets related to Banner Security Solutions. She keeps her PR firm earnings, her Chicago apartment, and the car purchased in her name. Mr. Creed retains the Ohio property, all interest in his company, and his personal investments. This is outrageous," Valerie's lawyer protested, though with noticeably less conviction. "Mrs. Creed is entitled to equitable distribution of all assets accrued during the marriage, including the value of Mr. Creed's company, which was clearly developed while they were legally married. A company she repeatedly dismissed as non-existent," Jessica countered. "A company she publicly mocked and undermined at every opportunity. A company funded entirely through Mr. Creed's separate property and formed under a legal entity established after their effective separation." The lawyers continued to argue, but Nolan could see that Valerie knew she had lost. When she finally spoke, her voice was tight with suppressed rage. "I want to speak to my husband. Alone." Her lawyer looked alarmed. "Mrs. Creed, I strongly advise against." "5 minutes," she insisted. "Just 5 minutes." Jessica glanced at Nolan, who nodded slightly. "We'll step outside." 5 minutes. When the lawyers had left, Valerie's calm facade crumbled. "How long have you been planning this?" she demanded, leaning across the table. "How long have you been setting me up?" "I haven't been setting you up," Nolan replied evenly. "I've simply been documenting your actions. This is about revenge, isn't it? Because I didn't believe in your precious company." "No, Valerie. This is about consequences. You made choices to belittle me, to steal from me, to cheat on me. Now you're facing the results of those choices." She changed tactics, her expression softening. "Nolan, please. We can work this out. I made mistakes, I admit that. But we had something good once." "Did we?" he asked quietly. "Or did you just see potential you could exploit?" Her mask slipped again, anger flashing in her eyes. "You're nothing without me. I made you. My connections, my family. Your family." Nolan cut her off, "treated me like dirt. Your father called me a failure to my face. And you stood by and let it happen. Every single time. My father was right about you," she hissed. "You're cold. Calculating. You were planning this all along, playing the victim while plotting to humiliate me." "I never played the victim," Nolan corrected her. "I simply worked in silence while you underestimated me. And now you're angry because you bet on the wrong horse." She stared at him, eyes narrowed. "My father won't let this stand. The Monroes have connections you can't imagine." "Threaten me all you want," Nolan replied calmly. "But consider this. I kept my company secret from everyone for years. What else might I be capable of that you don't know about?" Before she could respond, the door opened and the lawyers returned. The rest of the meeting proceeded with cold efficiency. Valerie signing the settlement agreement with a hand that trembled slightly with suppressed rage. As they prepared to leave, she turned to Nolan one last time. "This isn't over." "Yes," he said simply. "It is." The judge's gavel came down with a sharp crack, finalizing the divorce. Reporters packed the courtroom, hungry for details about the dissolution of what had suddenly become a high-profile marriage. Nolan sat calmly at the plaintiff's table, his lawyer beside him, as the judge read out the terms of the settlement. Based on the evidence presented, including documented financial impropriety by the defendant, the court finds in favor of the plaintiff. The defendant shall retain her personal earnings and the property in Chicago purchased in her name. The plaintiff shall retain all interest in Banner Security Solutions and associated intellectual property, as well as the marital home in Ohio. Nolan didn't look at Valerie, seated at the defense table with her father directly behind her. He could feel Rhett Monroe's glare burning into the back of his head. This court further orders the defendant to close all fraudulently obtained credit accounts and satisfy all outstanding balances thereon. Failure to do so within 30 days will result in criminal referral to the district attorney's office. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Financial fraud was not what the press had expected from this divorce. This concludes the matter of Creed versus Monroe Creed. Court is adjourned. As everyone rose, Nolan finally turned to look at Valerie. Her face was frozen in a mask of humiliation and rage. Beside her, her lawyer whispered urgently in her ear, likely advising her to leave quickly to avoid the press. Nolan walked calmly past her, nodding politely to the reporters, but declining to comment as he made his way to the exit. In the hallway outside, Jessica Weathers shook his hand. "Clean victory," she said with professional satisfaction. "Exactly as we planned. Thank you for your work on this," Nolan replied. "Mr. Creed." Rhett Monroe's voice boomed down the corridor. He approached rapidly, his face flushed with anger. "I want a word with you." Jessica stepped forward. "Mr. Monroe, I advise you to—" "It's all right," Nolan told her. "I'll handle this." Rhett stopped just short of invading Nolan's personal space, his military bearing evident in his squared shoulders and aggressive stance. "You think you've won?" he growled, keeping his voice low enough that the hovering reporters couldn't quite hear. "You think you can humiliate my daughter and walk away?" "Your daughter humiliated herself," Nolan replied calmly. "I simply refuse to let her take what isn't hers. You lied to our entire family for years, built this company in secret while pretending to be. While you call me a failure." Nolan interrupted, his voice still measured but with a new edge. "While you mocked me at family gatherings. While you told everyone who would listen that I was nothing." Rhett's jaw tightened. "I was right about you. Always have been. You're not a man. A real man doesn't hide in the shadows." "No," Nolan agreed. "A real man doesn't need to tear others down to feel strong. A real man doesn't belittle his son-in-law to control his daughter. A real man recognizes quality when he sees it." He stepped closer, lowering his voice further. "You trained soldiers. I built an empire. I win." For a moment, he thought Rhett might take a swing at him, the older man's fists clenched at his sides, his face darkening. But years of military discipline held. Instead, he leaned in, speaking through gritted teeth. "This isn't over, Creed. Nobody crosses the Monroes and walks away clean." Nolan smiled slightly. "I already have." He turned and walked away, leaving Rhett Monroe seething in the courthouse hallway. The months that followed the divorce saw Banner Security Solutions grow from strength to strength. Their API security protocol became the industry standard, adopted by major banks, tech companies, and government agencies worldwide. Nolan's personal wealth multiplied, and with it came the trappings of success: a sleek penthouse apartment in the city, a collection of high-performance cars, invitations to exclusive events. He accepted it all with the same quiet focus that had characterized his rise, neither flaunting his wealth nor hiding it. The press dubbed him the silent tycoon, fascinated by the contrast between his understated persona and his meteoric success. On a crisp fall morning, Nolan sat in his office reviewing acquisition proposals when his assistant announced an unexpected visitor. "Quincy Blake is here to see you, sir. He doesn't have an appointment, but he's quite insistent." Nolan raised an eyebrow. "Send him in." Quincy entered with a shadow of his former confidence. His designer suit couldn't hide the strain in his face or the nervous energy in his movements as he approached Nolan's desk. "Creed," he acknowledged stiffly. "Thanks for seeing me. What can I do for you, Quincy?" Nolan asked, gesturing to the chair opposite his desk. Quincy remained standing. "I'll get right to it. I want to buy into Banner Security. My investors are prepared to offer $50 million for a minority stake." Nolan leaned back in his chair, studying the man before him. "Why would I want your money, Quincy? Banner is valued at nearly $2 billion now. We don't need outside investment." "Strategic partnership," Quincy replied quickly. "My new venture, Secure Flow, has patented some complementary technology. Together, we could lock up the entire enterprise security market." "Secure Flow," Nolan repeated thoughtfully. "Wasn't that the company you formed after Technovate let you go?" Quincy flinched visibly. 6 months after acquiring his previous startup, Technovate had terminated his executive contract, citing irreconcilable strategic differences. "Look," Quincy said, an edge of desperation creeping into his voice. "I know we haven't always seen eye to eye, but this is business. It makes sense for both of us." "Does it?" Nolan opened a folder on his desk, sliding it toward Quincy. Because my analysis suggests Secure Flow is 3 months from insolvency. Your burn rate is unsustainable. Your last 2 product launches underperformed, and your Series B funding round fell short by 60%. Quincy stared at the detailed financial analysis before him. How did you get this information? The same way I know that you've leveraged yourself personally to keep the company afloat, Nolan continued, ignoring the question. Second mortgage on your house, loans against your luxury cars, even cashed out your retirement accounts. That's private information, Quincy said, color rising in his face. Nothing's truly private in the digital age, Quincy. Isn't that what you used to say in your TechCrunch interviews? Quincy's jaw worked as he struggled to maintain his composure. Are you refusing my offer? I am, Nolan confirmed. But I might have a counter-proposal. I'm listening. I'll buy Secure Flow's debt, all of it at 30 cents on the dollar. You step down as CEO, surrender all patents and intellectual property, and sign a 5-year non-compete in the security sector. The color drained from Quincy's face. That's corporate murder. That's business, Nolan corrected. The offer stands for 24 hours. Why are you doing this? Quincy demanded. Is this about Valerie? Because we never. This isn't about Valerie. Nolan cut him off. It's about you offering me a job out of pity at the Monroe family reunion. It's about you thinking you could use my wife to humiliate me. It's about consequences, Quincy. Just like with Valerie. You're a vindictive bastard, Quincy spat. No, Nolan replied calmly. I'm a businessman who doesn't forget. The offer expires tomorrow at noon. After Quincy stormed out, Nolan returned to his work, the interaction already filed away in his mind. His phone buzzed with a text from an unexpected source. Greta Monroe. Congratulations on the Forbes cover. Any chance you'd meet for coffee sometime? No family drama, promise. Nolan considered the request. Of all the Monroes, Greta had been the only one who had shown genuine interest in his work, even before his success became public. He typed a reply, sure. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. at Camden's. Her response came immediately. Perfect. See you then. The following day, Nolan arrived at the upscale cafe to find Greta already waiting, a technical journal open on the table before her. She looked up as he approached, offering a tentative smile. Thanks for coming, she said as he took the seat across from her. I wasn't sure you would, given everything with Valerie and Dad. You're not your sister or your father, Nolan replied simply. The waiter came to take their orders. Once he had left, Greta closed her journal and looked at Nolan directly. I wanted to tell you that I knew, she said, about your company. Before the announcement, Nolan raised an eyebrow. Ow! The technical specifications in those trade journal articles I mentioned at the reunion. They matched some theories you'd talked about years ago when you and Valerie first got married. Before, she trailed off. Before everyone decided I was a failure, Nolan finished for her. Yes. She looked down at her hands. I actually tried to tell Valerie. Multiple times. I showed her the articles, explained how revolutionary the approach was. She wouldn't listen. Why did you try to convince her? Greta shrugged. It seemed wrong, the way they treated you. I remember when you used to explain coding concepts to me at family dinners, before Dad would cut you off. You were always patient, never condescending. You treated me like I had a brain, unlike most of the men in our family. Their coffee arrived. Nolan took a sip, studying Greta over the rim of his cup. Thank you for that. It couldn't have been easy going against your family. They're not bad people, she said quietly. Just limited in how they measure success. Dad especially. If it's not something he understands, it's not real to him. And how about you? Are you happy in your career? Her face brightened. Actually, that's part of why I wanted to meet. I'm looking for a change. The company I'm with now is stagnant, not really innovating, and you're wondering if Banner Security is hiring. Nolan guessed. Is that too presumptuous? She asked, looking suddenly uncertain. I know things are complicated with our families, but I thought. What's your specialization? He asked. Enterprise data architecture. Security implementation for large-scale systems. Nolan nodded thoughtfully. We're expanding our enterprise division, planning to double the team by year-end. I'd have to interview like anyone else, she said quickly. No special treatment. I want to earn my place. I wouldn't have it any other way, Nolan agreed. Send your resume to HR. I'll make sure they know to expect it, but the hiring decision will be up to the department head. Relief and excitement mingled on her face. Thank you. Really? As they finished their coffee, Greta hesitated, then asked, Have you heard from Valerie at all? Since the divorce? Not directly, Nolan replied. Though I understand from industry contacts that she's struggling to find clients in Chicago. Apparently, being publicly exposed for credit card fraud doesn't inspire trust in PR professionals. And Dad, last I heard, he was telling anyone who would listen that I somehow tricked the courts. Greta winced. That sounds like him. For what it's worth, I'm sorry for how they treated you. You don't need to apologize for them, Nolan said. But I appreciate the sentiment. They parted with a handshake that felt like the beginning of a new, different kind of relationship, one built on mutual respect rather than family obligation. 2 weeks later, Greta joined Banner Security Solutions as the new head of HR for the enterprise division, having impressed the hiring team with her technical knowledge and management experience. The business press noted the irony of Nolan hiring his ex-wife's sister, spinning stories about family drama and corporate intrigue. Nolan ignored the speculation. He had built his company on merit, not nepotism or revenge. The fact that Greta's hiring served as a final twist of the knife for Valerie was simply a bonus that on a cool autumn evening 1 year after his divorce was finalized, Nolan drove to the outskirts of town, where a neglected garage stood on the edge of an industrial park. He parked his matte black Rolls-Royce and stepped out, keys jingling in his hand. The garage had been his first workshop rented with savings from his corporate job, before he'd even met Valerie. It was where he'd sketched the initial designs for the security protocol that would eventually make him a billionaire. He had purchased the building outright 6 months ago, preserving it exactly as it had been. As he approached, he saw 2 figures waiting by the entrance, Marta and their father. Right on time, Marta called out. The architect just left. Everything's ready for your approval. Jim Creed embraced his son warmly. Looking sharp, kiddo. Success suits you. Thanks, Dad. Nolan smiled, leading them inside. The garage interior was untouched, the battered desk where he'd spent countless nights coding, the mini fridge that had sustained him with energy drinks and leftover pizza, the whiteboard still covered with faded diagrams and equations. Hard to believe this is where it all started, Marta said, looking around. You really lived like this? Best years of my life, Nolan replied without irony. No distractions, just the work. Jim examined the whiteboard, tracing a finger over the equations. Your mother would have understood this better than me. She was always the brains of the operation. She'd be proud of what you're doing with it, Marta said, gesturing to the architect's renderings spread out on the desk. The Creed Technology Center, bringing coding education to underfunded schools. Full scholarships for promising students. Nolan studied the designs. The garage would remain intact at the center of a modern educational facility, a reminder of humble beginnings. It's a good legacy, he said quietly. Better than just success for its own sake. You could have just left them all behind, you know, Marta observed, leaning against the desk. Valerie, her dad, all of them, moved on completely. Revenge is nice, Nolan said, echoing words he'd known were coming. Legacy is better, but I'll take both. Jim chuckled, shaking his head. You always were the thorough one. As they left the garage, Nolan paused to look back at the unassuming building that had witnessed his rise. In 6 months, it would be surrounded by classrooms and laboratories, filled with young minds eager to create the next technological revolution, and on the wall of the entrance hall would hang a single photo Nolan Creed, once mocked, now a visionary CEO, beside a quote that had guided him through his darkest days. Let them think you're nothing. Then let them choke on your name. He smiled to himself, locked the door, and walked toward the future he had built in silence.